name is Ellie, and I think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. This is really a second part of a video that I titled Watch If You Don't Feel Good Enough. And in that video, I started to explain how you would start to overcome this wound, this fragment of yourself that did not feel good enough. And I started to talk about shadow work. So in this video, I'm going to completely go into depth on how I did shadow work to integrate this part of myself, which is now a part of myself, which means now that we're working together and I'm going to have a lot more control over the outcome of my life because I have accepted, connected, loved, and integrated this part of myself that does not feel good enough. What this means is not that that part is gone. We're never going to get rid of these fragments of ourselves, and that should never be the goal. We never want to get rid of any part of ourselves. We want to integrate, mean bring that part as a part of ourselves instead of a separate part, a shadow part that is affecting us subconsciously, which is driving the wheel of the direction of our life unconsciously. Now that I've integrated this part of myself, I'll be able to work with this part consciously. And I'm going to tell you in depth how I've done that, how I've done this shadow work. I do want to say that this shadow work has taken me years. So this is not a process that is going to be really quick. If you have deep wounds that we all do from our childhood, and this one is a common one, it's a big one, this feeling of not being good enough, not being significant. And it takes a lot of work. If you are willing to do the work, there is so much healing and so much joy on the other side of that, but it is work. So the groundwork, the work that I have done years ago for this shadow work that just yesterday I actually was able to finally integrate into myself, was to fully accept what happened to me as a child, fully be able to have compassion for my parents, for my caregivers, for their perspective, for their pain, for what was happening for them. And through that compassion, through understanding the humanness that we are as humans, through understanding the complexity of pain and wounds and what that does to us, and understanding that everyone does the best that they can with the level of consciousness that they have. Through knowing those things and fully tapping into those things, I was able to forgive my parents, my caregivers. So that's the first step. And that's no easy feat, what I just said. So that's the groundwork for the shadow work that I've done. So since I've already completed that part of the shadow work, I was able to go in and identify this specific wound that I have, this wound of not being good enough, not being important enough, significant enough, worthy enough for connection, for attention, for love. I made my parents' inability to connect to me because of their own pain and their own trauma, their own stories in their mind that they were wrapped up in. I made that believe. I perceived that to be because I wasn't good enough. And so now that I've identified exactly what the major wound that I have is, and I have forgiven my parents, I've accepted what's happened, I've grown compassion for my caregivers. Now I can start to integrate this shadow part of myself. Excuse me. I'm fighting off a sickness right now. So I went in to the little girl Ellie, and I envisioned in the last room of my mom's house that I lived in. There's a lot of significant trauma that took place there, and so I'm choosing this place to work with in my shadow work. And so what I do is I go back to that room in my mind, so sort of in a meditative state, and I right away change the environment to better suit my needs. So I had this big, not this big, I had these 2 average size windows on a 3rd floor that overlooked the city. And it was actually quite a beautiful view at night. But for me, abundance really is big windows, being able to see outside, preferably to nature. So what I did was I started to shift things. So I started with the window. I made those regular windows into these big open windows where I could see the beautiful city, and it gave me a feeling of abundance. There was a rug in my room. I took that rug out. Excuse me. I took that rug out because rugs hold germs. I'm kind of a germaphobe, and I put hardwood floors in. I gave myself all nice new things, replaced the old things that I had currently in that room. I completely changed the environment, first of all, to suit my needs entirely, to make me feel safe and abundant. I brought in a person, a caretaker, because that's what I really needed my whole childhood. I really needed to feel as if someone was caretaking me, someone was paying attention to me, someone was providing for me, supporting me, and caring for me. So I brought in this person, and there's not really an emotional attachment to this person. They are just caretaking me, sort of maybe like a nanny would do, that you don't really know that well. And so this person, I go back and forth, and I go as a little child, and I go all the way up to a teenager to like 15 years old in these, when I'm going in and doing this shadow work in a meditative state. So this caretaker will make me really delicious food and bring me water, tuck me in at night. He will send harmful people away for me so that I don't even have to deal with that. And then I bring in myself now. So I'll bring myself in now to talk to all of these different versions of myself, little girl, all the way up to 15. And I will connect with her because I needed connection. I needed someone to be able to hold space for me and be able to have the time and energy and mental capacity to connect to me. So I will do that for myself. I will go in and I will sit with myself. I will teach myself things about life, about energy. Most recently, what are you going to do? Most recently, I was sitting with myself about age 8, and I was teaching myself about how to feel the energy of plants, of nature, and their peaceful, calm, stillness energy, and how to connect to that, and what that was, and what that did for me. So I'm providing all of the things that I needed. So this is going to be very individual for you, depending on your wounding, depending on your environment, depending on what exactly you needed. But the idea is to go in a meditative state and to give yourself everything that you needed to be the best version of yourself. To give yourself the love, the connection, the acceptance, the guidance, the protection, the caretaking that you needed. It doesn't have to be yourself that goes in. Like, so I do both, right? I have this person, this caretaker who's caretaking me and protecting me, and I also have myself going in. You can have angels come in. You can have your actual parents if that feels good to you. You can have a spiritual teacher that you know. You can have Jesus, any ascended master that you want. Whatever is the best thing for you, to give yourself exactly what you needed. And this is really healing. It might sound like to someone who has no idea or has never practiced shadow work that this is like a game of pretend. But what this is doing is it is rewiring your brain. It is changing how you feel about the past, and how you feel about the past and your perception of the past is coloring every aspect of your life now. So by going back in and changing and giving yourself the things that you needed, you're calming your nervous system. You're changing your perspective in your brain about your past. So this is amazingly healing, and this is going to provide you with the growth and healing that you need. So the last part of this is, so for me, this wound of not being good enough, of being of not having someone in my life that can connect to me and who sees me as good enough to do that. So now that I've integrated that part of myself, and how I did that was doing all those things that I said, and then asking that part of myself. I had a conversation with her yesterday after I spent so much time with her doing all those things. And I said, we're 40 years old now, and I know that I'm good enough. I validated her feelings. I don't think I've said that yet. I said that in the first video, and I encourage you to go back and watch that. Watch if you don't feel good enough. But I spent a lot of time validating her feelings, but also explaining to her the difference between her feelings being valid and exactly why she would feel like she wasn't good enough and not worthy enough, not significant enough, but differentiating, making the difference between what is valid and what is true. So letting her know that yes, it's completely valid that you feel this way, and I can understand why you would feel this way, of course. And also, it's not true. You are good enough. And I developed this relationship with her, with this fragment of myself. And I let her know we're 40 now, and we know that we're good enough. We're important enough. We're significant enough. And I'm really happy now. Will you come and join me? Will you integrate with me? You actually have to ask this fragment of yourself, will it integrate with you? Will it join you? Will it work with you instead of hiding in the shadows? And I got that part of me to agree because it felt safe enough to integrate with me. But now I have the job of keeping my promise and keeping that fragment of me safe. So what that means is I need to move away from my life, from anyone who perceives me to not be good enough, not be important enough, not be significant enough, and not be worthy enough. I need to move away from anyone who sees me as below them, beneath them, who looks at me with contempt. And I need to move towards people who do the opposite of those things. Because to fully heal, I've done a huge portion of the healing, but to fully heal is to feel the opposite of that. So I internally feel the opposite of not good enough, but now I also need to feel this externally. I need to find relationships, partnerships, especially my primary partnership, with someone who sees me as their equal, who doesn't see me as being beneath them. So in order to honor my relationship with this fragment and keep this integration and keep this fragment myself from fragmenting off again, and then therefore controlling my life subconsciously, I need to be really vigilant to have to let go of relationships that are making me feel that I am not an equal, that make me feel like I am beneath them, that look at me with contempt and judgment and are always seeing the flaws in me. I will have to move away from those relationships, and I will have to move towards the nutrients I need, which is someone seeing me as their equal, someone seeing me as significant, as important, as good enough, and not looking at me with contempt. So I hope this gives you a really good idea. It sounds like a really lot, and it is. Like I said, this took me years. I want to say it's been 4 years now since I started this process, and I feel so good about where I am now. I also should say that this is never done. You're never done healing. You're never done integrating fragments of you. You're never done doing this work. But each time you do it, the better it gets, the better it gets. So you really can get momentum, and the more that you do, the easier it is to do more. So I really want to encourage you that even though you might be listening to this and think, oh my gosh, this is so much, you can do this. The better it gets, the better it gets. And the more work you put into this work, into healing, into loving yourself, into examining yourself, and into moving towards your well-being, the more you are going to feel so much joy, and the more you're going to be able to consciously move towards the things that you want and away from the things that you don't want. So I just want to let you know that you've got this. You can do this. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and comment below. I just love being with you here, and I absolutely can't wait to join you again. Thank you.